All right, for more on this Spanish security firm accused of spying on Julian Assange, let's turn now to former UK MP George Galloway. So, George, what are your thoughts on this new report of the Spanish security firm essentially creating a dossier on visitors to Julian Assange during his stay there, collecting intel for years, and then turning it over to the CIA?
Well, I was one of those visitors, of course, many times, and therefore they were illegally spying on me. But much more importantly, they were spying on every person who went there, including his legal representatives, which is a breach of the law on multiple levels and surely prejudices any possibility of a fair trial for Julian Assange back in the United States, something which should be weighed heavily by the British court now considering the extradition request. All kinds of people. Pamela Anderson was filmed in the lavatory. The eminent jurist Geoffrey Robertson, the Queen's Counsel, one of the most senior judicial figures in Britain. I just saw him there in your package, being illegally spied upon, not just by the security company, but by a company that then passed it over to a foreign entity, namely your government. This is a breach. We spoke yesterday about diplomatic immunity and the Vienna protocols. This is a multiple breach on an enormous level of those protocols. Either Ecuador knew that it was being spied upon by this Spanish company, and it certainly could not have known in the earlier part of the incarceration when President Correa was in office and deeply sympathetic to Assange, giving him political asylum. So if the Ecuadorian embassy did not know, then Ecuador has been illegally spied upon by a Spanish company on behalf of the United States government. It's simply monstrous, this, and just shows the lengths that these people were prepared to go to squeeze the life out of a legitimate whistleblower. And yet we've got half of America turned upside down by a whistleblower who turns out to be a CIA operative who blew the whistle, then went back to work for the CIA. What about this whistleblower who was blowing the whistle on illegal activities which shocked the world that the United States government and its allies, including ours here in Britain, were deeply complicit in? I'm furious about it, Manila.
Absolutely, George. I see your reason to be, and for you yourself to be among the people who are on this list. That's just incredible.
Presumably in the lavatory. I visited the lavatory many times. They've obviously got film of me there.
Well, George, if they've got Pam Anderson, they've got you in the lab as well. So let me ask you this, though. In terms of Ecuador and their role in all of this, do you have any reason to believe that there might be a link between when Moreno took office, and took out this big loan from the IMF and turning over Julian Assange? Are there links there?
Absolutely so. There's a direct relationship between the loan and the betrayal, the treacherous betrayal, one of the great infamies in world history of Julian Assange by Lenin Moreno, because the timing is obvious. They wouldn't have got the loan if they hadn't played ball with the United States government on that occasion. But the terms of the IMF loan were the brutalization, savage brutalization of the conditions of life of the people of Ecuador. That was the quid pro quo. We'll lend you all this money, but you'll have to dispense with all this nonsense of public services and decent wages for public service employees and all this pandering to the ethnic majority in Ecuador. You'll have to cut all of that out. Moreno played ball, cut it out, and now you're watching the results. The people want the fall of the regime. And I confidently expect that the regime will fall. And I've got to tell you, that'll be one of the sweetest moments of my life.
And George, in the scope of politics here, with this new information coming to light, how does this play to other nations that host Ecuador's embassies around the world? Doesn't this grow mistrust?
Yes, we must assume that if that's happening there, it was happening elsewhere. We know that the Ecuadorian government under Moreno was essentially a satrapy of the United States, engaged in a long tango which culminated in the granting of the IMF loan with US support. So if they were prepared to film illegally visitors to their own embassy and give it to the United States or cause it to be given, then you must assume that that was happening elsewhere. And it begs the question, what other countries are doing this? Just when you thought it was safe to go back into a foreign consulate after what happened to my friend Jamal Khashoggi, now you realize all of these consulates are dens of iniquity. I wouldn't set foot in one myself. And I'm making postal applications for visas from now on.
Real briefly, we know that Julian is your friend. Give us an update on him.
Well, he's in a very parlous condition. He's held in what is an internal Guantanamo Bay in absolute isolation. He has to go to Mass twice a week in order to see another human being. And I don't think he's even religious. He goes to Mass because he can fraternize very briefly for half an hour with other people. He's 23 out of 24 hours in a cell with no access to books, to computers, to papers, no ability to prepare his own case against what might be an extradition leading to a 175-year prison sentence. This is simply monstrous. And he's being held for no other reason that he is a political prisoner under threat of extradition. There are no other charges, no other sentences that he's serving. He is the #1 political prisoner in the world. And it's time that people, especially other publishers and journalists, woke up to the fact that if Julian Assange goes down, free speech, investigative reporting, journalism itself dies.
Agreed, George. Thank you so much for filling us in with this update. George Galloway, thank you so much for your time.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.